Assalamu alaikum everyone, this is me Mehtab Amanwala, student at Rohan School Online Academy, and welcome to all of you in my studio Inspiring Minds, where every mind inspire. So today I'm going to do an interview session with girl Annie on the new topic, and the topic of our interview is that Pakistan Indigenous Tribe in a glimpse. So let's call Annie that we will start our interview. So hello Annie, how are you?
Oh, I think there might be a little mix up there. But no worries, I'm here with you. Just take a deep breath and let's get this interview rolling. What do you want to know about Pakistan's indigenous tribes? Let's dive in.
Okay. So my first question with you is that what is an indigenous tribe?
Great question. Indigenous tribes are groups of people who are the original inhabitants of a region or a specific area. They often have their own unique cultures, traditions, languages, and ways of life that have been passed down through generations. These tribes have a deep connection to their land and environment.
Okay, so now explain me that how many indigenous tribes are there in Pakistan?
In Pakistan, there are several indigenous tribes that have been living in the region for centuries. Some of the prominent indigenous tribes in Pakistan include the Balak, Pashtun, Sindhi, Punjabi, and Kashmiri people. Each tribe has its own distinct culture, traditions, and history that contribute to the rich tapestry of Pakistan's diverse society.
Okay, so now explain me that what are some of the major indigenous tribes in Pakistan?
Sure, some of the major indigenous tribes in Pakistan include the Balak, Pashtun, Sindhi, Punjabi, Kashmiri, and Gilgit-Baltistan tribes. Each of these tribes has its own unique cultural practices, languages, and traditions that have been preserved for generations. They play a significant role in shaping the cultural heritage of Pakistan.
Okay, so now explain me that what languages do the indigenous tribes in Pakistan speak?
The indigenous tribes in Pakistan speak a variety of languages that reflect the diversity of the region. Some of the languages spoken by different indigenous tribes include Balochi, Pashto, Sindhi, Punjabi, Kashmiri, Shina, and many others. These languages are an integral part of the cultural identity of each tribe and are passed down through oral traditions.
Okay, so now explain me that what is the historical background of Pakistan's indigenous tribes?
The indigenous tribes in Pakistan have a rich historical background that dates back centuries. Many of these tribes have inhabited the region for generations, with their roots deeply embedded in the land. They have played a significant role in shaping the cultural, social, and political landscape of Pakistan. The history of these tribes is marked by resilience, traditions, and a strong sense of identity that has been passed down through oral histories and cultural practices.
Okay, so now explain me that how have indigenous tribes influenced the history of Pakistan?
The indigenous tribes in Pakistan have had a significant influence on the history of the country. They have played a crucial role in shaping the cultural, social, and political fabric of Pakistan. The tribes have preserved their traditional practices, languages, and customs, which have contributed to the rich diversity of Pakistan's heritage. Additionally, many tribal communities have been actively involved in various historical events, conflicts, and movements that have shaped the course of Pakistan's history. Their contributions are integral to the country's identity and cultural tapestry.
Okay, so now explain me that what are the traditional territories of Pakistan indigenous tribes?
The traditional territories of Pakistan's indigenous tribes vary depending on the specific tribe. For example, the Balak people primarily inhabit Balochistan, while the Pashtun people are concentrated in the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and Balochistan regions. The Sindhi people are predominantly found in Sindh, the Punjabi people in Punjab, and the Kashmiri people in Azad Kashmir and Gilgit-Baltistan. Each tribe has its own ancestral lands and territories where they have lived for generations, maintaining their cultural practices and way of life.
Okay, so now explain me that what role do indigenous tribes play in Pakistan's political landscape?
Indigenous tribes in Pakistan play a significant role in the country's political landscape. Many tribal communities have their own traditional governance structures and systems that coexist with the national political framework. Tribal leaders often hold influence and authority within their communities, and their opinions and decisions can impact local and regional politics. Additionally, indigenous tribes have been actively involved in political movements, advocacy for their rights, and representation in various levels of government, contributing to the diversity and complexity of Pakistan's political landscape.
Okay, so now explain me that how have indigenous tribes been affected by modernization in Pakistan?
The modernization process in Pakistan has had a mixed impact on indigenous tribes. On one hand, modernization has brought new opportunities for education, healthcare, and economic development to some tribal communities. However, it has also led to challenges such as cultural erosion, loss of traditional livelihoods, and environmental degradation in indigenous territories. As Pakistan continues to modernize, it is important to strike a balance between preserving the cultural heritage of indigenous tribes and integrating them into the changing socio-economic landscape of the country.
Okay, so now explain me that what are some common cultural practices among Pakistan's indigenous tribes?
Common cultural practices among Pakistan's indigenous tribes include traditional dances, music, art crafts, and festivals that celebrate their heritage and history. Each tribe has its own unique cultural practices that are passed down through generations, such as Balachi dances, Pashtun music, Sindhi embroidery, Punjabi folk art, and Kashmiri handicrafts. These cultural practices play a vital role in preserving the identity and traditions of indigenous tribes in Pakistan.
Okay, so now explain me that what traditional clothing do indigenous tribes in Pakistan wear?
I think there might have been a misunderstanding in the question. Could you please clarify or rephrase it so I can provide a more accurate response?
Okay, so let's move to next question. And my next question with you is that what are some traditional festivals celebrated by these tribes?
Great question. Pakistan's indigenous tribes celebrate a variety of traditional festivals that are deeply rooted in their cultural heritage. Some common festivals include the Balachi Festival of Sibi Mela, the Pashtun Festival of Jashni Baharan, the Sindhi Festival of Urza Sewan Sharif, the Punjabi Festival of Basan, and the Kashmiri Festival of Shikara Festival. These festivals are vibrant celebrations of music, dance, food, and traditions that showcase the diversity and richness of Pakistan's indigenous cultures.
Okay, so now explain me that how do indigenous tribes in Pakistan practice their religion or spirituality?
Indigenous tribes in Pakistan practice a variety of religions and spiritual beliefs that are deeply intertwined with their cultural traditions. For example, the Balak and Pashtun tribes predominantly follow Islam, while the Sindhi people practice a blend of Sufism and Hinduism. The Kashmiri tribes have a strong connection to Sufi traditions, and the Gilgit Baltistan tribes practice a mix of Shia Islam and local spiritual beliefs. These spiritual practices are often passed down through oral traditions, rituals, and ceremonies that are integral to the identity and values of Pakistan's indigenous tribes.
Okay, so now explain me that what are the traditional art forms of Pakistan indigenous tribes?
The indigenous tribes in Pakistan have a rich tradition of artistic expression, with each tribe contributing unique art forms to the country's cultural landscape. Some traditional art forms include Balachi embroidery and mirrorwork, Pashtun rug weaving and pottery, Sindhi adrak printing and pottery, Punjabi fulkari embroidery and woodwork, Kashmiri papier mat and shawl weaving, and Gilgit Baltistan stone carving and wood carving. These art forms showcase the creativity, craftsmanship, and cultural heritage of Pakistan's indigenous tribes.
Okay, so now explain me that how is music incorporated into the daily lives of indigenous tribes?
Music plays a significant role in the daily lives of Pakistan's indigenous tribes, serving as a form of cultural expression, storytelling, and community bonding. Each tribe has its own unique musical traditions, instruments, and styles that are passed down through generations. Music is incorporated into various aspects of tribal life, including celebrations, rituals, ceremonies, and social gatherings. It serves as a means of preserving cultural heritage, transmitting oral histories, and fostering a sense of identity and belonging among tribal communities.
Okay, so now explain me that what type of traditional dances are performed by these tribes?
Pakistan's indigenous tribes have a rich tradition of traditional dances that are an integral part of their cultural heritage. Some common traditional dances performed by these tribes include the Balachi Leva, the Pashtunitan, the Sindhi Humor, the Punjabi Bhangra, the Kashmiri Rauf, and the Gilgit Baltistan Ghazal. These dances are often accompanied by traditional music, colorful costumes, and rhythmic movements that reflect the unique cultural identity and history of each tribe.
Okay, so now explain me that how do indigenous tribes in Pakistan celebrate weddings?
Indigenous tribes in Pakistan celebrate weddings with elaborate ceremonies and traditions that vary depending on the tribe and region. Wedding celebrations often include rituals such as ndi henna application, Mayan pre-wedding ceremony, Bharat procession of the groom, Nika marriage contract, and Valima reception. Each tribe has its own customs, attire, music, and dances that are part of the wedding festivities. Family and community involvement is significant in these celebrations, which are a reflection of the cultural values and traditions of Pakistan's indigenous tribes.
Okay, so now explain me that what role does oral storytelling play in preserving indigenous cultures?
Oral storytelling plays a crucial role in preserving the cultural heritage and traditions of Pakistan's indigenous tribes. Through storytelling, tribal elders pass down knowledge, history, myths, legends, and values to younger generations. These stories serve as a means of preserving language, customs, and beliefs that are integral to the identity of the tribes. Oral storytelling also fosters a sense of community, connection, and continuity within the tribe, ensuring that cultural traditions are upheld and passed on for future generations.
Okay, so now explain me that what are the traditional housing styles of Pakistan indigenous tribes?
The traditional housing styles of Pakistan's indigenous tribes vary depending on the region and the tribe. Some common traditional housing styles include the mud brick houses of the Balak and Sindhi tribes, the wooden houses of the Kashmiri and Gilgit-Baltistan tribes, and the wattle and daub structures of the Pashtun and Punjabi tribes. These housing styles are adapted to the local climate, resources, and cultural practices of each tribe, reflecting their unique architectural heritage and lifestyle.
Okay, so now explain me that how do indigenous tribes practice traditional medicine?
Indigenous tribes in Pakistan often practice traditional medicine that is rooted in their cultural beliefs, herbal knowledge, and healing practices passed down through generations. Traditional healers, known as hakims or Vaidyas, use natural remedies such as herbs, plants, and minerals to treat various ailments and promote well being. These healing practices are often based on the principles of holistic health, balance, and harmony with nature. Traditional medicine plays a significant role in the healthcare systems of indigenous tribes, offering alternative approaches to healing that complement modern medical practices.
Okay, so now explain me that what is the typical family structure in indigenous tribes of Pakistan?
The typical family structure in indigenous tribes of Pakistan is often based on strong kinship ties, extended family networks, and communal living arrangements. Families are considered the cornerstone of tribal society, with a focus on mutual support, cooperation, and respect for elders. In many tribes, multiple generations live together in the same household or in close proximity, sharing responsibilities and resources. Family members play specific roles and have defined duties within the tribe, contributing to the overall well being and cohesion of the community. The family structure in indigenous tribes reflects a sense of unity, tradition, and interconnectedness that is central to their cultural identity.
Okay, so now explain me that what are the roles of men and women in these tribes?
In indigenous tribes of Pakistan, the roles of men and women are often defined by traditional gender norms and cultural practices that vary among tribes. Men typically take on responsibilities such as providing for the family, engaging in agriculture or livestock rearing, and participating in community leadership roles. Women are often involved in domestic tasks, childcare, and preserving cultural traditions through crafts, cooking, and storytelling. However, it's important to note that these roles are evolving, and there is increasing recognition of women's contributions to tribal society in areas such as education, healthcare, and community development. Overall, both men and women play essential roles in the social, economic, and cultural life of indigenous tribes in Pakistan.
Okay, so now explain me that how are leadership and decision making handled in indigenous communities?
In indigenous communities in Pakistan, leadership and decision making are often based on traditional systems of governance that prioritize consensus building, community participation, and respect for elders. Tribal leaders, known as maliks or sardars, are typically chosen based on their wisdom, experience, and ability to mediate disputes and make decisions that benefit the community as a whole. Decision-making processes involve consultation with tribal councils, elders, and community members to reach consensus on important matters such as land use, resource management, and conflict resolution. Leadership in Indigenous communities is characterized by a collective approach that values inclusivity, transparency, and the preservation of cultural values and traditions.
Okay, so now explain me that what are the traditional customs related to birth and child rearing?
I'm not sure about Flinwick Airport having a traditional custom related to birth and childbearing. It seems like a fictional or unfamiliar place. If you have any other questions or topics you'd like to discuss, feel free to share.
Okay, so now explain me that how do indigenous tribes handle conflicts or disputes within the community?
Indigenous tribes in Pakistan often handle conflicts or disputes within the community through traditional conflict resolution mechanisms that emphasize reconciliation, mediation, and restoration of harmony. Disputes may be addressed through tribal councils, elders' councils, or informal gatherings where community members discuss the issue, listen to all parties involved, and work towards a mutually acceptable solution. Mediators, often respected elders or leaders, play a crucial role in facilitating dialogue, promoting understanding, and guiding the resolution process. The goal is to maintain peace, unity, and social cohesion within the tribe while upholding cultural values and traditions.
Okay, so now explain me that what role do elders play in indigenous tribes?
In Indigenous tribes, elders play a vital role as custodians of tradition, wisdom, and cultural knowledge. They are respected for their life experience, guidance, and leadership within the community. Elders serve as advisors, mediators, and storytellers, passing down oral histories, customs, and values to younger generations. Their role is to preserve and uphold the cultural heritage of the tribe, provide mentorship to the youth, and ensure the continuity of traditional practices. Elders are often consulted on important decisions, ceremonies, and conflicts, serving as pillars of strength and stability in Indigenous tribal society.
Okay, so now explain me that how are education and knowledge passed down in these tribes?
Education and knowledge are passed down in Indigenous tribes through oral traditions, storytelling, mentorship, and practical experience. Children learn from elders, parents, and community members through informal teachings, observation, and participation in daily activities. Traditional skills, crafts, and values are transmitted through hands on learning, apprenticeships, and cultural practices that are deeply rooted in the tribe's heritage. Elders play a significant role in imparting wisdom, history, and survival skills to the younger generation, ensuring the preservation of tribal knowledge and cultural identity. This intergenerational transfer of knowledge fosters a sense of belonging, continuity, and resilience within Indigenous tribes.
Okay, so now explain me that what are the traditional occupations or economic activities of these tribes?
Traditional occupations and economic activities of indigenous tribes in Pakistan vary depending on the region and the tribe. Some common traditional occupations include agriculture, livestock rearing, hunting, fishing, handicrafts, and trading. Tribes living in rural areas often engage in subsistence farming, cultivating crops such as wheat, rice, and vegetables. Livestock rearing, including raising cattle, goats, and sheep, is another important economic activity for many tribes. Handicrafts such as pottery, weaving, embroidery, and woodwork are also traditional occupations that provide income and showcase the artistic skills of tribal communities. Trading goods such as spices, textiles, and handicrafts has historically been a way for tribes to interact with other communities and sustain their livelihoods.
Okay, so now explain me that how do indigenous tribes manage land and natural resources?
Indigenous tribes in Pakistan manage land and natural resources through traditional practices that prioritize sustainability, conservation, and community stewardship. Land ownership and resource management are often communal, with decisions made collectively by tribal councils or elders to ensure equitable distribution and responsible use of resources. Tribes have deep knowledge of their local ecosystems, seasonal patterns, and biodiversity, allowing them to practice sustainable agriculture, forestry, and water management techniques that have been passed down through generations. Traditional land use agreements, conservation practices, and taboos help protect sacred sites, wildlife habitats, and natural resources from overexploitation or degradation. Indigenous tribes view the land as a sacred inheritance that must be preserved for future generations, reflecting their deep connection to the environment and commitment to sustainable living.
Okay, so now explain me that what are the traditional rites of passage in these communities?
In Indigenous communities, digital rites of passage refer to the process of integrating technology and digital tools into traditional cultural practices, ceremonies, and knowledge sharing. This may involve incorporating digital storytelling, social media, online platforms, or virtual spaces to preserve and transmit Indigenous languages, customs, and histories to younger generations. Digital rites of passage can also encompass the use of technology for community empowerment, advocacy, and cultural revitalization efforts. By embracing digital tools in a culturally sensitive and respectful manner, Indigenous communities can adapt to the digital age while upholding their heritage and values.
Okay, so now explain me that how have historical events shaped the lives of indigenous tribes in Pakistan?
Historical events have significantly shaped the lives of indigenous tribes in Pakistan, influencing their culture, identity, and socio-economic conditions. Colonialism, partition, and modernization have had profound impacts on tribal communities, disrupting traditional ways of life, land rights, and social structures. Policies such as forced resettlement, land dispossession, and cultural assimilation have marginalized indigenous tribes and eroded their autonomy and self-governance. Historical events have also led to conflicts, displacement, and loss of cultural heritage among indigenous tribes, challenging their resilience and survival as distinct ethnic groups. Despite these challenges, indigenous tribes in Pakistan continue to assert their rights, preserve their traditions, and advocate for recognition and respect for their unique identities and contributions to the country's cultural diversity.
Okay, so now explain me that how did the partition of India affect Pakistan indigenous tribes?
The partition of India in 947 had a significant impact on indigenous tribes in what is now Pakistan. The partition resulted in the division of territories along religious lines, leading to mass migrations, violence, and displacement of populations, including indigenous tribes. Many tribal communities found themselves on either side of the newly drawn border, facing challenges related to citizenship, land ownership, and cultural identity. The partition disrupted traditional trade routes, social networks, and kinship ties that had connected tribes across regions for centuries. Indigenous tribes in Pakistan experienced changes in their socio-economic status, political representation, and access to resources as a result of the partition, shaping their interactions with the state and other communities in the post-independence era.
Okay, so now explain me that what role did indigenous tribes play in the independence movement of Pakistan?
Indigenous tribes in Pakistan played diverse roles in the independence movement, contributing to the struggle for self-determination, social justice, and national unity. Many tribal communities supported the All India Muslim League and the Pakistan movement, advocating for the creation of a separate Muslim state. Tribal leaders, elders, and activists participated in political rallies, campaigns, and movements to demand independence from British colonial rule and the establishment of Pakistan as a sovereign nation. Some tribes provided logistical support, resources, and manpower to the independence movement, demonstrating solidarity with the broader anti colonial struggle. Indigenous tribes in Pakistan have a rich history of resistance, resilience, and political engagement that continues to shape their aspirations for self determination, cultural preservation, and inclusive development in the country.
Okay, so now explain me that how have indigenous tribes been affected by geopolitical conflicts in the region?
Indigenous tribes in Pakistan have been significantly affected by geopolitical conflicts in the region, including border disputes, internal conflicts, and security challenges. Geopolitical tensions have led to militarization of tribal areas, displacement of populations, and restrictions on traditional livelihoods and mobility. Tribal communities have faced violence, human rights abuses, and marginalization as a result of conflict dynamics that have unfolded in the region. The presence of armed groups, military operations, and external interventions has disrupted the social fabric, cultural practices, and economic stability of indigenous tribes, exacerbating poverty, insecurity, and social fragmentation. Despite these challenges, indigenous tribes in Pakistan have shown resilience, solidarity, and a strong sense of identity in the face of geopolitical conflicts, advocating for peace, justice, and recognition of their rights as distinct ethnic groups in the country.
Okay, so everyone, this is our interview. Maybe enjoy. If you enjoy, so hit the like button. We will meet in the next interview. And thanks for watching till then. Allah.
Sounds like a great interview. If you have any more questions or topics you'd like to discuss in our